saying that more controversial and in some respect more stimulating at the same time, boring, stimulating both, is the form of economic history called, the new economic history. Pretentiously, Cliometrics, it means Cliometrics, deals with Cliometrics, or at least offensively you can say econometric history. Cliometric, econometric, all these are, they all refer to the same discipline. So, econometric history, Professor E. H. Hunt has written, can be considered to have three aspects. What are those three aspects? We will have to deal with that. The first is, it actually differs only in degree from the approach long pursued by most economic historians. Much greater emphasis is placed on a statistical method. We are talking about in the last slide statistics. So, a statistical method or upon precision of definition and categorization, and computers are enlisted to carry out the calculations which formerly would have been impossible. Second aspect of economic history is the enlistment of economic and statistical theory in order to reconstruct measurements which might have existed in the past, but are no longer extant, extent means they are in use. To use the words of a leading econometric historian, well, we are dealing with these kind of things, measurements, and there we will find R.W. Fogel, Robert Fogel, whom those who knew him personally, they used to call him Bob. Way back in 2005, when I was attending World Economic History Congress, he was supposed to come and deliver the keynote lecture, yes. So, everybody was saying that Bob is not, we don't see Bob. I was just new to that conference. So, I was just looking at who is this Bob, why they are calling somebody as Bob. Then I look at the brochure, and in the brochure it was written Robert Fogel will be delivering the keynote address. So, I could relate the two, the economics of the two. So, I am saying Bob Fogel, actually R.W. Fogel is the leading light of this discipline. It is again a matter of degree rather than a complex break from with other older methods. I will elaborate upon his findings, then you will see that, well, these things were earlier thought to be negative, and Bob Fogel finds that no, these are not negative, not unsuited to development of capitalism or development of economy. Actually, they were very crucial for the development of economy. So, he is devising a new principle, new, tool to develop this theory. So, indirect quantification of a rather unsophisticated sort had been used. For example, in the standard of living controversy in the historiography of the British Industrial Revolution, or in tracing the expansion of money economy in 19th century Ireland through sales of Guinness beer, the indirect quantification of the econometric historians draws upon a much more sophisticated armory that is called regressive analysis. Regressive analysis, rent, input, output, and then location theory, hypergeometric distribution, and von Neumann Morgenstern utility index. The third aspect of econometric history is and that is the most distinctive and ambitious also at the same time, is the use of the counterfactual conditional concept. This term counterfactual, if you are listening to me regularly, you must have found that I have also referred to this concept earlier also. In other words, in plain words, we always, whenever there is a discussion, we say, in order to understand the other's point of view, we say look at from the devil's point of view, counter to your argument. You are giving a standard argument, then there is a sudden person raising a hand suddenly and say that, look here sir, had it not happened then, Would it have happened in the same manner in which you are telling us? So, had it not been like this, what would have been the situation like? This is the contribution of Fogel and his followers, especially Fogel and you know his associates. The most famous exponent of the counterfactual conditional concept is, as I said, Fogel, R.W. Fogel, who is challenging by with the application of this kind of counter argument, he was challenging the long standing theory about central importance of American railroads in the expansion of American economy, constructed a model of the American economy as it would have been without railroads. The American gross national product in 1890 would, he reckoned, he calculated, have been only 6.3% lower than it actually was. The other outstanding piece of work in this canon is that of John R. Mayer and Alfred J. Conrad, The Economics of Slavery in the Antebellum South, which effectively challenged some old theories about the uneconomic nature of slavery. While claims therefore have been made on behalf of the achievements, real and potential of econometric history, often by those who have at least direct knowledge of its operation. When Klein Thomas, of past and present and distinguished student of English Revolution, declared the Times Literary Supplement in the Times Literary Supplement that econometric history was sweeping all before it and would soon provide definite, this was his optimistic hope, would provide definitive solutions to various historical problems. He was answered by Professor Peter Temin, whom I had the good luck of meeting in one of the World Economic History Conference at Boston. When he was released, he was I think 90 plus, and he, in a brief function, he was releasing his book, a new book on history of health in the United States. I missed that chance of acquiring that book. I thought I will get it, but till now I could not get that book. It is not available on otherwise the most resourceful source, Amazon also. So, Peter Temin, he wrote an article in 1953 published in Economic History Review. He has dealt with this theme more elaborately. So, I would say, as I say here also in the lecture, I have given his place with which he was associated. Here I was, so I met him there only. There was celebration of his book. He is one of the most able exponent of or capable exponent of econometric historians who indicated the various limitations of this type of historical inquiry. Again then, more direct application of the techniques of economic science to historical problem can yield a rich harvest, very rich harvest. I will demonstrate that in my subsequent development of the lecture. Familiarizing themselves with the arguments and conclusions of econometric historians. I include myself in that category, but that does not mean that they must all become econometric or econometricians forthwith. So, history and quantitative analysis. At an elementary level, we apply the quantitative method as we do in ordinary life. We assign numbers, how to do it? We assign numbers to years and immediately realize that an event taking place in 1598 must have occurred before 1605 logically. So, numbered years in eras help us to determine order of sequence, a necessary foundation for determining cause and effect in the causation of history concept. If we want to know how far ancient states had become dependent on cavalry, it was a new force at that time, like nowadays we have F-16 series of jets. So, we may find out our answer in figures. Suppose there is a ruler who is employing 1000 horsemen and 10,000 infantry in say AD 401. By 420 AD, there is a ruler who is having an army having 2000 horsemen and only 5,000 infantry. Then you can easily say, you can easily judge the degree of the increased dependence on the cavalry within, within within 19 years of a ruler. So that gives you a comparative assessment. So that there, statistics is of great use. Such uses of figures is being extended to many new areas. One may count the numbers of times each particular injunction of moral conduct, that is Dhamma, occurs in Ashokan inscriptions. We have dealt with Ashokan inscriptions in great detail. In order to judge which injunction came most frequently to Ashoka's mind. And so far, on the basis of statistics, so was stressed most by him. Historical linguists, yesterday we were discussing it, count occurrences of particular words in text to determine increasing or decreasing usage, or even to determine the age of a text by fixing the age when its use of a particular words were more common. This I have dealt already. An interesting use of quantitative method has been application of it to determine the ethnic composition of Mughal nobility, as notably in the works of Ahmad Thoroughly, Mughal nobility under Aurangzeb and the apparatus of the empire. I mean, it is naturally in economic history that use of numbers is the most common and has obtained most sophistication. So, demography or the study of population for that matter, you can't do it without having statistical data before you, is practically entirely concerned with numbers. Therefore, before censuses began, earliest in China, by in 1800 in France, 1868 to 72 in India, and then it was decennially done, it is still done, 1881, 1891, 1901, 1911, this is how it goes on. One needs to use the data of diverse kind to reconstruct population figures. There are many mythologies also being built, even though we have hard statistical data, much reliable, because much precaution is taken by the respective governments, whatever may be the form of the government, whichever government is there, they take, it is very carefully and most elaborately done. Even then, myth makers do play, and this is the age of half truth, so they take advantage. There also they take advantage of statistics. Similarly, taxation figures, price data, currency circulation statistics, import-export data, the lifeblood of economic history, it can be gauged from reading these statistics. For example, see the debate on silver influx during 1550-1750, a very hot topic in Indian economic history. The question of tribute, for that matter, drain of wealth, exacted by Britain from India. In order to use the figures, some arithmetical methods need to be understood and applied, very elementary arithmetic. For example, the use of ratios. That will give you the comparative picture, land-man ratio. Calculating percentages, the importance of compound rate of interest and its calculation, the method of indexing. When we were students, it was called Chakravarti Ganit. Indexing with a particular figure as a base, that in 1960, if the base was the 100, then by 1921, how far we have reached, that kind of thing. And unless you have a base figure, you can't compare. So you need two constants to compare the two, the developments within the two time brackets. As regarding economic concepts, the way we deal with the gross domestic product or national income is calculated is very important, and nowadays our politicians are, I don't know how far they understand, I assume they understand the concept. Now every time you find there will be something on GDP, that our GDP is increasing so fast, our rate of development is going beyond say 7 point something, which is tremendous. So debates on Indian national income under British rule started by Dadabhai Naoroji, F.G. Atkinson, H. Heston, Ellen Heston, and S. Shiva Subramanian. They have given various methods, how to calculate national income. Here, interestingly, I would also say, when I used to teach economic history of modern India, in that I used to make the students learn how to calculate national income. Now, our economic thinkers of our country since last 3-4 decades are saying that we must take into consideration, we should take into consideration the income of the beggars. Don't leave them, because they also amassing wealth on large scale. So this should also become part of calculation of national income. Now, who will gather that data? That's the practical problem. Will the beggar tell you that I have 20 kgs of gold in my stock? Then we will say, why you are begging then? So the data will come with great difficulty. So in considering economic relationships, the calculations of real wages, money wages modified by changing price level, balances of payments, now you hear about this, favorable, unfavorable between nations, India vis-a-vis China. There was a news in last week only that our balance of trade is tilting to in favor of China instead of towards us. Then terms of trade, that is favorable or unfavorable between sets of commodities. So the quantitative basis of nationalist theory of tribute and Ergeri Emmanuel's famous theory of unequal exchange. Now, a new book has also come by Mr. A. Boult, who has further improved upon Ergeri's works of unequal exchange between the developed world and the developing world, how we are at disadvantage all the time under the current imperialism of trade. So, counterfactual history and statistics deserves some more discussion. All historical narratives, when dealing with causes or alternative courses, become to some extent counterfactual. To that extent, if this event had not happened, historians often say, I was saying just now, such change would not have had occurred. So, new economic history, also called econometric history or cliometrics, sometimes takes counterfactual history to its logical extreme by constructing hypothetical statistics through the exclusion of a certain economic phenomenon as if it had not happened. This enables one to judge the gain or loss occurring if a particular event, for example, war, or institution, for example, slavery, or industry, for example, railways, had not happened or existed. Most econometric historians do not go so far, but still they typically first frame a hypothesis, then break down statistical evidence to see what would be the result if the hypothesis were a fact. This too remains a form of counterfactual history. And Fogel on railways and US economic growth is a classic example. Basic assumption behind the hypothesis must also be considered. They are all based on absolutely full-fledged market economy, that is new classicism. Very little econometric work has been done from a socialist or even Keynesian point of view. There is no also need to check much that passes for econometric history, like critique of L.E. Davis and R.A. Huttenbach, Mammon and the Pursuit of Empire, 1860-1912, and R.W. Goldsmith, Financial Development of India, 1860-1977. So now coming to this genesis and development of Fogel's thesis, he is concerned with the role of railways in the economic development of United States. The importance of slavery as an institution, was it very favorable for capitalist development, and its economic role in USA, and studies in historical demography. In all these studies, he is applying counterfactual methodology. Fogel's scientific breakthrough was his book published in 1964 on the role of the railways in the American economy. Joseph Schumpeter and Walt W. W. Rostov had earlier, with general agreement, asserted that modern economic growth was due to certain important discoveries having played a very vital role in the development. Fogel tested this hypothesis with extraordinary exactitude and rejected it. He rejected their theory. The sum of many specific technical changes rather than a few great innovations, you see the difference between the two, determined the economic development of any country or nation. We find it intuitively plausible that the great transport system play a decisive role in the development. Fogel constructed a hypothetical alternative, a so-called counterfactual historiography, that is, he compared the actual course of events with the hypothetical to allow a judgment of the importance of railways. He found that they were not absolutely necessary in explaining the economic development and their effect on the growth of GNP, that is gross national product, was less than 3%. So, few books on the subject of economic history have made such an impact as Fogel's. His use of counterfactual arguments and cost-benefit analysis made him certainly an innovator of economic historical methodology. Fogel's painstaking criticism of his sources, his use of the most varying kinds of historical material made it difficult for his critics to argue against him on purely empirical grounds, because he had massive statistical data behind him. As Fogel has stressed, it is the lack of relevant data rather than lack of relevant theory that is often greater problem for research workers. Fogel's use of counterfactual analysis of the course of events and his masterful treatment of quantitative techniques in combination with economic theory have had a substantial influence on the understanding of economic changes taking place during 19th, 20th centuries. Fogel's second work of importance, which came in 1974 about slavery, which aroused great attention, bitter controversies, treated slavery as an institution and its role in the economic development of the United States. Because slavery was considered a bad thing, morally bad. And this gentleman says that, but slavery, even though it was not a capitalist thing, Marx had already rejected it, that slavery doesn't have any potentiality of capitalist development. This gentleman says, no, slavery did help in contributing to rise of capitalism in states. Fogel showed that established opinion that slavery was an inefficient, unprofitable and pre-capitalist organization was incorrect. He is summarily rejecting it. The institution did not fall to pieces due to its economic weakness, but it collapsed because of political decisions of the time. He showed that the system, in spite of its inhumanity, he is not relegating that to background, had been economically efficient. His exceedingly careful testing of all possible sources, as I said just now, and his pioneering methodological approach have allowed Fogel to both increase our knowledge of an institution's operation and disintegration and to renew our methods of research. Both his books, 64 and 74 books, Railways and on Slavery, both the books have forced researchers subsequently to reconsider earlier generally accepted results, and few books of economic history have been scrutinized in such detail by critical colleagues as by him. Fogel's third area of research has been economic demography, and in particular, the changing role of mortality over long periods of time and its relation to changes in the standard of living during recent centuries. This project is less controversial rather than the other two, is both interdisciplinary and international in nature with fellow workers from many countries. This was a massive project. His conclusion is that less than half of the decrease in mortality can be explained by better standards of nourishment before the breakthroughs of the modern medicine. This leaves the greater part of the decline unexplained. According to Fogel, a systematic analysis demands an integrated study of mortality rates, morbidity rates, food intake, and individual body weights and statures, height, weight, and other things. A combination of biomedical and economic techniques is required to achieve this, something that he has at present set about accomplishing. It is already apparent that his analysis will affect research in economic history at many levels. And here, I would conclude with the remark that, you know, a introduction of counterfactual methodology has certainly drastically changed our appreciation of economic developments and their studies. Thank you.